Oh, we got some friendlies.
Hello, good morning, everybody. How are we? We're all pumped here. We were doing the pump and, getting excited inside. So we're going to give you a really exciting 45 minutes. But before I start, right, there's a lot of confusion, I think, with the Cardano ecosystem in who's what. So I don't say confusion in a bad way, but I just want to identify the different entities that are here before we start talking to the personalities. So Cardano, the first part is the input-output, which is the overall Web3 engineering company, as we know, that created Cardano and the ecosystem here. Then we have Shielded Technologies. So we have two gentlemen here, and that's a spin-out, a technology spin-out from Cardano, from input-output. And their main focus of work has been Midnight, the protocol, and today we have the new president of the Midnight Foundation. So those are the four entities, three entities and one protocol, just to put in perspective. So I'm going to start off. Charles, I don't really need to introduce you. You are obviously a big giant in this space, a co-founder of Ethereum, and obviously a co-founder and CEO of Input-Output. You live in Wyoming. You have a fantastic bison ranch by all accounts, and you are an explorer in both nature and tech, and definitely explorer. At your heart, you're a mathematician, which is very exciting. It all comes down to maths. And you're also, you may not know this, he's part of the group that de-extincted the Dar wolf. So that's kind of, Charles has a lot of interesting things. So Charles, we're here today, right? And we're not going to talk about the Dar wolf, well, that's pretty exciting. We want to talk about how input-output, shielded technologies, and Midnight Foundation are laying the groundwork for private, interoperable, multi-chain world. So if I may start by asking you, Charles, and I will bring in the gentlemen how we get there for their full backgrounds as well. What inspired your decision to back the development of Midnight? Where did Midnight come from?
Well, first, hi, everybody. How's the audio back there? It's a little hard to hear up on the stage. You guys can hear us okay? Okay, good. So I've been in this space a really long time, old enough to remember when I had to pay for coffee. And what's been really cool over the last decade and a half is we've watched crypto grow from nothing, nobody cared, to an industry that has over 550 million users, nation states care, and there's an enormous amount of incredible ideas in commerce. But we're right now at a wall. And you kind of feel it. It's getting a little stale. And that wall is, we're at the edge of real-world use, real-world applications, real-world utility. And the problem is that public blockchain infrastructure can only get you so far. If everything is public and transparent, everything's auditable, you can see everything globally, you can't do healthcare, you can't do supply chains, you can't do payment money systems. Because do you want a stable coin where everything you've ever bought forever is remembered? And anybody in the world can see it. So real-world assets, all the stuff that is connected to business in general is not possible to do without some level of privacy. And so how we've been doing privacy in the cryptocurrency space is we do the blockchain component public, and then private's a central server that Uncle Bob owns. And hopefully he's honest and trustworthy and he doesn't dox it. Or we use some magic cryptography and we got a multi-sig or something like that. So I said, it'd be really cool to build a blockchain, which like Ethereum is programmable, so a programmable private smart contract system that also has a public side, and that you can do both things there, and you can share it across the entire industry. And instead of building yet another blockchain, it'd be cool to build a meta chain where it could do this as an extended service to basically everybody. So Ethereum developers can use it, Solana developers can use it, Cardano developers can use it. So it's kind of like this connecting tissue that allows all the real-world use cases to percolate, and then you can load and deploy them into the chain infrastructure that you want. So this was the initial idea about 6 years ago. And the problem was that almost no technology existed to do this. So we had to think over a 6-year period, how do you build the privacy stuff? Halo or this or Plonk or Sonic? And then we had to think, well, how do you handle disclosure? Because it's private, but you also want selective disclosure. Like if you're running a business, the HR department gets to see something, the CEO gets to see something. If you're running a regulated business, the regulator, the auditor gets to see something. So how do you do selective disclosure? And then also, how do you talk to all the blockchains? How do you build hybrid applications? How do you build multi-chain signatures? How do you share state and information across all these things? And these thoughts turned into an internal project at Input-Output called the Midnight Program. Then from that, over several iterations, we said, we're going to build a division. So we built Shielded Technologies, and Eran became the CEO, and he spun it out. And then we said, let's deploy it to 37 million people, give it in everybody's hands, no Ponzonomics, no ICO, just give it out. but we need a vehicle to actually run and regulate an ecosystem like that, to be the nexus point of how we grow and commercialize that ecosystem, which led to the Midnight Foundation. So over the past 6 years, it started from an idea, solving a very real-world problem, which is the barrier for $10 trillion of assets entering our industry and bringing people together, to a technology project, to a technology company, to a foundation. And now all these pieces are together, and we're going to be able to get Midnight out the door this year.
Okay, that is really important. And privacy, we know, I think when I first came into the space, like the transparency was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. But you can't do business with transparency. You can't show all your transactions. But you have an additional element that you built into Midnight from the beginning. So it's not, you intend to complement other blockchains. You're not saying you have to be, we are the one chain, you have to come on to us and to Midnight. Tell me how important it was to have the complementary non-compete aspect of Midnight.
Yeah, because network affects network effect. I mean, Google and Microsoft fought this legendary war the last 15, 20 years about Bing versus Google, the search engine. And Microsoft would go buy billions and billions of dollars worth of companies every year, trying to bring up the market share of Bing searches, and it never worked. So once consumers pick systems, they get sticky. So you don't want to think about how do I move them over. What you want to think about is how do I augment and enhance the API economy. And when you look at a lot of the things that people do, complexity tends to get black boxed. It tends to get compartmentalized. Look at ChatGPT. There's all these people building AI-oriented applications. Very few of them are building frontier models. Instead, what we do is we wrap the model, we put an interface on it, you call it as your backend, and what you focus on is the consumer experience and your fine-tuning. So maybe you're Spellbook and you want to solve the, how do I get lawyers into the AI space? Well, Spellbook does the legal side. OpenAI, through GPT, does the AI side of that relationship. So similarly, privacy, especially computational privacy and selective disclosure, is a super complicated topic. And it involves having a lot of understanding of cryptography and distributed systems and all these things. Not many teams do that well. We have 168 scientists we work with. We have labs from Stanford to Tokyo. We're pretty good at it. And it took us a long time and many millions of dollars to get good at it. So what we need to do is wrap that capability and make it a service that's available to every other blockchain and let you pay in your tokens. So if you're an Ethereum developer, pay in Ether. If you're a Solana developer, pay in Sol. If you're a Cardano developer, pay in ADA. You know, we call that cooperative economics. It feels like an extension of your platform. And then we also want to bundle it so it works with your tools, your languages, and your paradigms. So you don't have to go and learn a whole bunch of new technology and new things. You just write the code the way you want to write it, and it works, and it extends your application, and it becomes a natural part of your application flow. That's what we learned from the Web 2 world, and that's why Web 2 has scaled to billions of users, and that's what we're violating in the Web 3 world. It's so adversarial. Every day, somebody launches a new blockchain and says, we'll migrate everything, learn all this new stuff, do all this new stuff, build all these new dApps, get all your users to migrate over, and then 2 years later, let's do it all over again. That's not how it should work. It should be one-click install. It should be simple, and you should be able to pay how you want it, where you want it, when you want it.
I guess it's like driving on the motorway. You don't want to be discriminated because you've got a Jeep or a little Toyota or something, so everybody could use the same motorway. So if I may move to Ben. Ben, you are Ben Beckmann. You are the CTO of Shielded Technologies, which, as we explained, is a spin-out of Input-Output. Ben, could you just, in a few words, explain who you are to the audience here, please? Introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Ben Beckmann. I'm a formerly trained computer scientist. I'm one of those types of people that actually likes to do the work that I do day to day and potentially could do it as a hobby. My background is in AI. I've done blockchain professionally since 2014, and I've had the luck to work with Charles and the team to build out applications in the Cardano space and now Midnight.
Cool. Okay, so we're talking about privacy. Oftentimes people get mistaken, like they think privacy is like Monero or Zcash, which are privacy coins. Now, this is quite different. Midnight is not a privacy coin. It's a confidential computing layer. Can you explain a bit about the technology behind that? I know it's very complex, as Charles was saying, but can you tell a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So I think first off, we're starting by standing on the shoulders of giants. So these existing applications that you mentioned, the Moneros and Zcash of the world, they've demonstrated a technology that enables you to have a private transaction that occurs between two endpoints. There's a limitation to what that can do and where you can use that in the actual economy. And it's missing things like smart contracts. So what Midnight adds is it adds the ability to have think of like a real world transaction where it's between you and the other person. You can selectively disclose information that others can see, but you don't have to reveal the private information that you want to enter into the transaction. So if you have a proprietary business process that, as it's calculating, occasionally needs to commit something to the chain, you can keep all of that proprietary information to yourself. You can build a transaction and you can submit a proof to the chain that actually demonstrates that you've done this correctly, you've done this successfully, you've done it in accordance to the rules that are defined in the contract.
Is that what you term a hybrid contract? Or is that something else?
So this is just a traditional contract that would live on Midnight. The hybrid contracts start to talk to what Charles was mentioning, where we have an interesting tokenomics model where we separate the equity token from the resource. And what that allows you to do is it allows you with the equity token to generate the resource so that you can execute smart contracts. Well, because we have that separation, now that resource can be applied to individuals from other ecosystems. So if you're an Ethereum holder and
sharing is caring, yeah.
Yeah, and you know nothing about Midnight, you can still use us in a way as an intermediary or middleware to add privacy to the technology you already have. So rather than rewriting or replanting a different app like Charles was mentioning a moment ago, you can simply add this capability to your existing system where you have a feature that's missing and it can call off to Midnight and your users don't even have to know that that exists.
We're building, we're not chucking stuff away.
I just want to add a practical example. It really helps elucidate it. So imagine a commercial transaction where you have to meet a suitability guideline to conduct that transaction. Right now, how that's done is it's a completely off-chain process. So some keeper of that suitability, like you're a US citizen or you're an accredited investor or you're not a US citizen or you're a resident of this country or whatever, they have to go through KYC somewhere and then they get some marker that says, okay, you're good to go, and then they can participate. With systems like this, you start moving to algorithmic regulation, and you can use a zero-knowledge proof, and it says, yes, I'm eligible for whatever this thing is. I'm the right age, this is the right money, it's low risk, but that's the only information that's known is the transaction is eligible. There's no transmission of personally identifiable information, so you don't know it's John Smith living in Boulder, Colorado, 38 years old, he's a lawyer and he has $800,000 in his bank account. You just know this account is allowed to participate in this product or buy this thing. And when you look at the global space of compliance, it's hundreds of billions of dollars of collective labor and effort, and there's tens of billions of dollars of fines and problems right now because the effort doesn't work so well, and it's subject to data breaches on an almost daily basis. Because every time people collect this information, they get usually hacked. And then all of a sudden your social security number gets leaked or your identity gets leaked or all these other things. So by having a privacy system, a selective disclosure system, and a proof system, you put it together, it maps perfectly to real life commerce, but then at the same time it massively improves the safety of every transaction that people have.
I guess it's like when you go to the off license, if you do, and you want to buy alcohol, you only need to show that you're over 18 and not everything else. So even if there was a hack, there's a bunch of over 18 people have been buying beer.
Right, but the problem with that is, like, normally when you show you're over 18, you show your driver's license. And now I know where you live, I know your name, you're an organ donor, I have a picture of you, all these things. I just asked, are you at or over the age of 18?
Yeah, totally. It's crazy. You think back, it makes no sense. So if I can bring in Eran, please. Eran, Barak, you're the CEO of Shielded Technologies, again, the engineering spin-out from Input Output. Can we talk a bit about the organization? Shielded Technologies was created to drive the whole move towards Midnight. So can you tell me about how your mission is evolving now that Midnight's out there and we have the foundation as well?
So, hi everyone.
And tell me about yourself. I beg your pardon. Sorry.
Sure.
I beg your pardon.
A little just a quick background by myself. I started in engineering, moved to product marketing, sales, and have been involved in financial services for over 20 years. One of the reasons, by the way, that drew me out into blockchain technology is realizing building mission-critical systems for the financial industry could be taken over by third parties that are adverse to the business itself. And blockchain and decentralized technology is the future and the cure for that situation. But I also knew that we would need privacy in order for kind of businesses to get on chain. So Midnight is the engineering powerhouse that is going to bring that, and Shielded Technologies is the company building that for the future of blockchain in the industry as a whole. We are working together with Fahmi, Charles, Ben, everybody, and great teams behind us to launch this later this year, and we're very excited on how this can transform the industry.
Cool. So how do you see your mission evolving? So you're
So
ground zero.
Yeah, sure. So beyond what we could do for kind of a permissionless public chain, there are other services and capabilities of private chains and ancillary services that customers would need. If we are aiming to truly bring Web 2 and Web 3 together, you don't want, and I'm from financial services, you don't want TradFi and DeFi, you want to merge those into Fi, and we've got a spectrum of interest and services that are needed to make that mashup happen.
So what is your ideal user, and what are the main obstacles to them adopting the Midnight technology?
We're building a technology, a layer 1 technology that could be used as layer 2 or layer X. Our primary customers are the developers, the people who are going to build and operate applications on this technology. So we want to see them take advantage of this. One of the things that drew me out to Charles and the project of Midnight is the absence of privacy on blockchain today. If you think about it, I can't see any business moving to use blockchain technology where everything is intransparent. How could you do that if you would put customer data? You would violate their privacy. You would violate Bank Secrecy Act. You would violate GDPR. Using a technology that never forgets, how can you do that? It's a violation of laws and regulation. So we have to transition blockchain technology from where the industry is today to the next generation where privacy is embedded. We also need to provide operational certainty around cost and SLA. If I need to pay for transactions on a blockchain with a token whose price is volatile, how can I build a business plan for tomorrow? How can I create a certainty that I know how much it's going to cost me to operate a dApp on this chain? Midnight is creating tokenomics and architecture that would allow for privacy to be kept, allow for cost predictability, and many other things that enterprises are telling us. I believe that if we bring those assets together, we're going to help businesses from Web 2 and Web 3 cross the chasm and see the reality of what blockchain can bring to the world.
I think it's very exciting, because I know when I first got into this space, I was like going, oh my God, this is so exciting. Transparency, immutability, all the things, disruption. And then when you sort of sit back, and in the last couple of years, I've been looking at confidential computing, and you're going, you're right, how on earth can you do a business when people know your details? I mean, people get fined because of hacks, but if you use the blockchain like that, you're going to be fined because you're going to show all your details. So then the big news yesterday was that the Midnight Foundation was founded, and we have hot news here. We have Fahmi Syed, who is the president of the Midnight Foundation. So I'm going to ask you, what is your vision? I mean, first of all, before your vision, tell the people here a little bit about yourself. You have a stellar past as well.
Thank you, Jill, and morning, everyone. Nice to see you here today. So I'm Fahmi. Yes, I am the president of the Midnight Foundation. So it sounds like a big title. We have a big project ahead of us. My background is in the financial markets. I was very fortunate to work in the asset management and the hedge fund industry for many years. Very innovative business, pushing the boundaries of finance and technology. I was fortunate then 2-3 years ago to get invited into this space. I was working with Gavin Wood and the Parity team, learned a great deal there and what decentralized technology and blockchain really means. And then very fortunate 15 months ago that Charles and Eran decided to invite me into this Midnight project and the team, and I've been excited and delighted to be here ever since. What is the project? What is Midnight Foundation aiming to do?
Your primary foundation, your mission.
Yeah, so I mean the foundation's responsibility ultimately is adoption. We want to take the vision and the mission of the Midnight Network out to audiences like this. It's developers, it's users, it's enterprises. What we wanted people to recognize is to reclaim their right to privacy. It is a fundamental right everybody has in their physical world and their digital world. And somehow in the last few years, it's been taken away from us, either in terms of how our data is monetized and used by others, or how the word privacy suddenly has a negative connotation. It is our fundamental human right. It is enshrined in constitutions from the US, from Canada, Europe, into the Far East. And yet somehow we've given it away, and we want to reclaim it and give it back to WebChain blockchain developers and users.
Could I ask you to give the example? We were talking earlier about selective disclosure. With
Yes.
everyone here has got a lanyard and your tag on it. I know
Yeah.
you're not wearing it now for the purpose of the thing, but can you explain
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
you might use
So
that?
everybody has a lanyard. I've had to take mine off. So I'm going to do a social experiment. Every now and then you have your name on your lanyard. Every now and then some of you may accidentally flip it over or purposely flip it over. And you flip it over because you want to go and discover. You want to walk around these stages, these booths, and you want to discover information without giving away who you are. And then when you find information that you want to then interact with, you will flip it back over. You will present your name and where you work. That is rational privacy. That is selective disclosure. We do it in our physical world. And when you then engage with individuals, you will give them your name and what you do, but you don't give them your assets, your revenue, information that you hold personal, or that may unlock other benefits to you or the user or the counterpart. That is rational privacy. That is what we do every day. And yet somehow in blockchain, we all disclose everything we have. So it's about bringing that concept back.
Or
to what we
it
do.
goes both ways sometimes. I find, as a journalist, my name is out there, my face is out there, but everybody has their little PPFs, what do I call, little images. I'm going, who is that person? I don't recognize the red eyes, whatever. So it's actually both sides of the thing. On the one hand, people don't want to be doxxed. On the other hand, with the transparency, everybody is being doxxed. So tell me, how will you allow builders, your main function would be to bring builders into the ecosystem. How will you persuade them to come in, and how will you help them come into the system and build on Midnight?
Yeah, ultimately data has a value. We've seen the large enterprises, Meta, Amazon, and others, build algorithms around the data we give them. How we shop, how we spend, what we hold, what we do. And they have got very powerful and very rich off the back of that. And we have somehow got accustomed to that because it's free. The power of free is a very strong word. We all walk through airports or train stations and we go A to B in a straight line, but when somebody offers us a free drink or a free chocolate, you kind of deviate around that. And because of that concept, mentally, we've given our data away and allowed others to monetize that. For developers, what we want to encourage is to say, how do you sort of empower your users to monetize that? It could be, and give that freedom back to them. So there's a freedom of have freedom of association, being able to communicate with Charles, with Eran, and not feel that we're going to be censored or being sort of ostracized for those communications. The freedom of commerce. How do I show my assets, hold them privately, selectively disclose them to others so that can open gateways to other transactions, to other opportunities, to monetize that. And it's this sort of the freedom of expression. We should be free to express whatever it may be that we have, whether it's views, political views, personal views, and others, without again feeling that somebody is going to block us, that they will block our account, shut it down, shut down our bank account. And it's about regaining that freedom that Bitcoin initially gave us, but what Bitcoin gave us was freedom, but by exposing our data, our privacy. And we're saying we can take what Bitcoin gave us and the evolution through Ethereum, Cardano, and other chains, and we bring back rational privacy back into that equation.
So how will you, as president of Midnight Foundation, so I think we're hoping the audience is grasping the concept of how important this is, and let's claim back our privacy, it's the final frontier. So how will you, in real terms, encourage builders to come on and engage with Midnight and build? What plans do you have? I know it's your second day in the job, sorry for putting you on the spot, but what plans are you thinking about doing?
Well, part of it is going out and spreading the word of what is Midnight. Education is a key part of that. Reclaiming privacy as a concept, as a word. Then again, with Eran, Ben, and the Shielded technology team, is showing that the technology and the smart contract language we're using, which is very TypeScript-like, opens it to a wider audience. And we want them to come and experiment, to come and play around. And what we're saying is, whether you build natively or you're coming from another chain, how does Midnight and its technology augment what you already do, augment what your users need? And so part of it is through hackathons, community development, and again, the team will expand. It won't be just me speaking on stage like this. We'll get other people spreading the gospel of what is Midnight and showing people the power of actually taking back your privacy and owning your data.
Yeah.
Eran, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I'll add to that.
And then Charles.
having a great developer experience is paramount. We want developers to come and say, building on Midnight was just a magical experience. And we've made some critical design choices to make that happen. First, our smart contract language is based on TypeScript that pretty much everybody has access to, can read, understand, and work with. Second, we give you flexible tools. So our ledger, for example, supports both shielded assets and unshielded assets. So you can use the same technology kind of in whatever you want, as you said, selective disclosure. Third, you have the ability, because there is price predictability, for the DApp operator and builder to decide whether they want the users to pay for transactions, to sponsor for themselves, for the users, or do any other combination. And lastly, as Charles said, our goal is cooperative tokenomics, not adversarial. So we're designing ourselves to be a very easy layer 2 where people that are using other technologies, other chains, can easily interact, both integrate and economically work with our chain. So when you think as a developer, choosing Midnight is the easy choice. You are not locked into an ecosystem. You're using a technology that seamlessly works with other things. That's the smart choice.
You know, I love that, cooperative, not adversarial. I think, Charles, you wanted to come in here too as well.
So it's easy to understand these types of things about adoption when you think about real-life use cases and specific partners and relationships. So yesterday, we just announced a partnership with Brave. They have 84 million users. A lot of people use them. I use them. Joe Rogan uses them. Pretty popular browser. When you look at Brave above and beyond an integration of getting their wallet to use ADA and store Night, they have two parts to their business model where we think we can add a lot of value to that. One is that they make money through ads. They have this whole BATS ecosystem, and ads are a big deal. Two of the Magnificent Seven, Meta and Google, they get ad money. That's how they got started. And the other is the VPN component of it. So one is a subscription model, and the other is to get to know your users. In both cases, their core USP is that what makes us better than the Mag 7, what makes us better than ExpressVPN or these things is better privacy. But if the privacy is centralized, you still have too many vectors of attack. You need good cryptography and decentralization with that. So there's a very natural overlap of the type of technology that Midnight has and the type of technology that Brave builds with as a native Web3 company for 84 million people, which is a case study for businesses like Google and Meta, which have billions of customers. And that's an example of a non-financial use case, but it's just as important because you're talking about an economy. You're talking about subscriptions. You're talking about privacy and public components. So we always think about how do we use Midnight in terms of a particular vendor, whether it be a custodian and they say, wait a minute, if we're custodying crypto assets and people find out which one of these crypto assets belong, then suddenly if Goldman Sachs moves money or JP Morgan moves money through our custody, people know JP Morgan's moving money. They're not going to be so happy that people know they moved $200 million of Bitcoin or something like that, and somebody watches it like the private jet trackers or something like that. So they say, boy, we need to shield our custody accounts but keep them on chain so we have proof of reserve and all the access control stuff. Or it be real world assets where somebody's like, well, I want to do real estate and I need to publicly list it and verify the deed is there and these things, but there's all these easements and private components about the real estate that are need to know to the people involved in the ownership and transfer of the title. So let's go tokenize that asset and bring that on chain. So you're always thinking in terms of what problem am I trying to solve, and how in solving this problem does it give the business model more liquidity, more value, more consumer protections, more security, and ultimately gives them the ability to compete better against other people as they go on their growth journey.
I'm curious, collaboration is a big focus point here today. You're not the one ring that rules them all, you can use it. Do you think, you're mentioning there a lot of Web 2 sort of applications, will it be easier to encourage Web 2 to get into blockchain than existing Web 3? Because there's a lot of a siloism in Web 3.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons we built Midnight, was that we spent years at I.O. with a commercial group running around and beating our head against the wall talking to the Fortune 100 and Fortune 500, and we would get to a point where their scientists were enamored. They're, oh, we love the technology, we love the crypto, oh, it's so amazing. And then when the business guys got in the room, the compliance guys got in the room, and these people actually make business decisions got in the room, they said there's just no model here. it can't work for us. There's too many red flags, there's too many issues, whether it be the unpredictable pricing or the inability to keep business logic private or the issues with industrial espionage or regulatory concerns. Any one of those was a kill condition in a deal. So you get 9 months of procurement and then you die right at the end of the tunnel. So we learned a lot from that process, and we said, well, how do we build an environment, an ecosystem where nobody gets fired for picking midnight? That was the old adage for IBM.
For IBM,
Nobody
yes,
ever got fired for buying an IBM computer. It was the safe bet. And the cool part about Midnight is it's just as applicable to the permission blockchain world from the fabrics and these things and all the things they're thinking about in the legacy world as it is in the Web3 world. And it puts that company in the driver's seat where they up front get to decide how are we going to structure this to make our compliance team happy? How are we going to structure this so we can afford to operate it? How are we going to structure this so our customers can seamlessly enter in and out? And there's a schema there where they feel comfortable, we feel comfortable. But then what's beautiful about Midnight is it also talks to the Web3 world. Because we have these beautiful bridges with Ethereum and Solana and Bitcoin and all these other things. You're not taking a bet over who's going to rule the world. What you're doing is you're at the crossroads where no matter who ends up conquering the blockchain world, you can talk to them as if you live on that ledger. So it's a very safe bet for them to take that foot in, which is why we have great relationship with Hyperledger. It's why we joined the Confidential Computing Consortium, and we work with partners there like Microsoft and Amazon and others who are doing confidential computing with Azure and Amazon Nitro and these types of things. It's why we're looking at the traditional database world and all these things, because they have problems at scale of not 10 users or 1,000 users, 1 billion users. It's a big deal for them. And the regulations are opening up where they finally can come into crypto. So the CEO at the top says, you should do something in crypto. And then the product people are like, okay, well, we'll go figure that out. And we want Midnight to be the thing that they actually go for.
Well, you know, I think that's your tagline. No one ever got fired for buying Midnight. I think steal that one straight away. So question for you then. You mentioned regulatory issues. In the EU, is going to be banning privacy coins. I know we're not privacy coin, but they're going to be banning them, I think, by the end of 2030. So how does that impact, I don't know, maybe it's Charles again, but how does that impact dealing with the regulations? Because they're
regulators love Midnight because the privacy coin component is not transferable. If you put it with a capacity exchange, it doesn't constitute the privacy regulations. And when you combine selective disclosure, it means every conversation is a negotiation, and they can put suitability guidelines of what they like and what they don't like, and then you can have various things in and out of compliance on the chain. So it's the adult conversation. That's why you say rational privacy. Naked privacy makes no sense for anybody, even the consumer. Because what if Uncle Bob dies? No one can ever get his keys, get his money, so what about his wife or his kids? Suddenly all of Uncle Bob's money is just gone forever and there's no estate planning capability. Or what if you get Alzheimer's? I have 4 grandparents who died in the last 10 years. 3 of the 4 died of neurodegenerative disorders. All 3 of them forgot what their name was before they died.
Wow.
So we like to believe that we're completely in control of everything, but the world is an ecosystem. The world is a community. And so you need to build schemes and regimes where you have disclosure when it's to your benefit. And so when you talk about rational privacy, you're doing that, and then the minute you have that, then the regulator can say, okay, we understand and appreciate this, and in many cases it optimizes regulation. Like, how do you do travel rule compliance with an exchange when you withdraw? Well, when you're in a zero-knowledge system, you can prove that that address is okay. But you don't have to reveal any information about the holder of that address or these types of things. Under the current regime, they have to KYC both sides. And when you're Binance with 400 million users, imagine how many people are in their compliance desk. Probably over 1,000 employees are there. And I'd like to get rid of all those employees and just have it all be automated.
It's a lot of duplication of data as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's data that can be attacked. Because the minute you have it, somebody's going to try to get it.
Yeah.
And even the US government can't keep it secret, like the OPM hack, where everybody applied for a security clearance, and not just got, but applied. So all the rejected people, too, and the reasons why they rejected, Chinese hackers stole all that information.
Yeah.
Never aggregate data unless you need to.
Do you know what's interesting? Cybersecurity is obviously a big issue, and they say with cybersecurity, the attacker only has to be right once, but the defense has to be right all the time. So AI is a big, huge issue in cybersecurity because even idiots can create code and all the rest of it. How is AI impacting privacy and with
Ben?
Ben, I think maybe CTO will ask
well,
you.
so-
Is it, how is it, and what are you doing with it?
So you're going to have AI agents that become more and more intelligent, and they're going to be able to figure out things that a human can't do or a large organization can't do. I think everybody would agree with me on that. But those agents can act in your benefit or other people's benefit, and you just need to empower them with the capability so that the actions that they can take are actually appropriate for what they need to be able to do. So, for example, if I want to frame myself as an AI agent, I have an asymmetric information advantage over somebody that I'm interacting with, because that's how I set up the particular conversation. And what you need to enable these agents to be able to do is they need to be able to know who their friends are, know who they're talking to, assert that the relationship is appropriate, correct, qualified in some cases. And then the information that is private needs to be able to be retained by that agent and not necessarily communicated to anybody else, just like a human would do. So what you're going to see is you're going to see kind of a rise of the capability of these tools, and then you're going to see the application of those tools to the technology. And in my view, we're going to incorporate our tools in there so that we can be part of the flow. And whenever your agent needs to do something that isn't completely disclosed or has partial or selective disclosure, you're going to be able to do this with Midnight in the AI space, just like having cooperative tokenomics. The AI agents can be cooperative
You
themselves.
can't ignore it, it's there, yeah.
I got a great AI story for you.
Okay.
So the advantage of being a serial entrepreneur is you start collecting companies, kind of like Elon collects kids. And I have a healthcare clinic up in Gillette, Wyoming, and we got about 13,000 patients. So every time I go up there, I always hear stories about, how patients are doing things and how they're using technology and so forth. But we just got this AI story the other day, and it really showcases the need for privacy with AI. So we had this one patient come in who had a rash in a certain area, and he had a lot of knowledge about this rash, an unusually large amount. And our doctor's like, "Are you a physician?" He said, No. I said, "Well, how do you know so much about the terminology and what it could be and the differential diagnosis?" He said, "Well, I took a lot of pictures and I uploaded them to ChatGPT, to Gemini, to Grok, and these things. And I just said, what is this? And I spent a few hours kind of going back and forth. And I was just thinking, okay, so those poor human reviewers, when they're going through all the chat records of things, they're going to see some great pictures on ChatGPT. So people are using these tools, and they're super powerful and super amazing, but they don't quite understand that the minute you share something with ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these services, that is known by a gargantuan network of things, forever remembered and used and analyzed and no longer your property. And when you start thinking this way, you start saying, gosh, maybe I should share in a slightly different way. And what's really cool about what Midnight is doing is there's a path with confidential computing and Midnight technology that we can interact with these amazing tools and get the semantical value. What is this rash? But maybe they don't see a picture of our private parts in the process of doing that. And it's a vulgar example, but it really showcases a lived reality that consumers aren't quite aware of the consequences of what happens when they share their data, they share their healthcare data. And the problem with AI is it's a super magnet. Search engines and social media were like the first generation, second generation of that magnet. AI is the super magnet where people even have AI girlfriends now and AI boyfriends, and they share all the intimate details about their entire life with a bot that goes to a company like Replica, which has tens of millions of users. With things like Midnight, it puts you back in the driver's seat because you can get a guarantee that while you get the value of the share, you don't reveal the personally identifiable information, so you don't get the downside of the share.
It sounds like there's a UK program, used to be very popular, a medical one, where people would expose all their body parts to, anyway, it's kind of crazy. We're going to come to the end. Do you want one last thing?
One more thing, because both Ben and Charles talked about the intersection of AI with blockchain, about the need for a blockchain to have the selective disclosure to give us the ability to use AI safely with blockchain. I think there is an additional element in Midnight that people may not be aware, where we are actually not just protecting data, we're also protecting metadata. You mentioned privacy coin. We've got a shielded resource that allows you to protect the metadata, because AI can figure so much about your world just by looking at the metadata. Charles gave the example of a patient, right? I could look at a blockchain, even if I can't see the patient records, if I see that somebody didn't go to the doctor for a full year and suddenly they're going to see the hospital 5 times, I can figure out what's going on. We have to protect not just the data, but also the metadata to make blockchain and AI work safely together.
Okay, we're coming rapidly to the end. I'm going to say that's your last sentence because you're saying we've got to protect the metadata. Ben, a last sentence. We're looking at the clock here, so what would make Midnight successful in your eyes in 30 seconds?
It's all about cooperation. It's all about enabling these other ecosystems to take advantage of the privacy capability we provide.
Okay, cooperation, protecting the metadata. Fahmi, how would you say Midnight is successful? What's your takeaway?
It's adoption. It's moving real world technology and use cases onto the blockchain. Today, large corporates, individuals will not put their bank accounts, their payments, their solutions on a blockchain. Who here today would ever expose their income, their bank account? And yet on a blockchain, you're willing to represent everything. And what we're saying is that shouldn't be the case. We can bring decentralized technology with rational privacy and bring adoption, real adoption, large use cases onto Midnight.
Okay, so collaboration, protection of metadata, adoption. Last words to you, Charles. What would you say that Midnight is successful?
Well, first we have to change the way things are done. You know, I hate Ponzonomics. I hate these VC investors that come in and screw up the launch. I hate how there's 2 classes of people in the cryptocurrency space. There's the retail, everyday people that I run into in X spaces, and they're my friends, and I love talking to them. And then there's this elite class of people that kind of run the industry, and they bark at you about how everything's going to be better, and then they take your money. One of the first things about Midnight is we have a brand new and novel distribution model, which is fair. No one ever invested. I spent my own money on it. And so it gave me the luxury of being able to deploy something where everybody gets to play at the same time, the same way. That's how Bitcoin got started. And that's why Bitcoin is so big and so powerful and still so loved, despite the fact that it's the least advanced of all the cryptocurrencies. The second thing is, I want people to realize that this is the moment where we actually can solve real problems instead of complain about real problems. You have the 2020 election and people say, oh, the voting system is broken and oh, it's all rigged. Well, you can now build, if you want to, on Midnight, a secure voting system where you can verify that your vote was counted correctly, but you don't reveal who you are, but it's a real vote. You can build a fair money system. You can build a private stable coin where all your transactions aren't tracked. You can build a supply chain system that proves the carbon output is lowering, but it doesn't reveal how much Apple is buying for its iPhone. This is where the rubber meets the roads. We have no excuses as an industry anymore. When we flip the switch and mainstream adoption comes, which is the next 24 months, we have to get people into principles-based systems. We have to get people into systems where they're fair by design, they have inclusive accountability, and they're cooperative. They work with each other. I'm done with the adversarial tokenomics. I'm done with this coin's better than that coin. I could not care less whether you think your coin's great or not. In the last 15 years, 94% of all coins, 1.9 million, have gone bust. So there's plenty of coins and tokens and these things. I don't care anymore. I just want everybody to work and be one family, one community, so we can get back to trusting each other again.
I think that's a very noble and achievable ambition. And again, I think no one's ever going to be fired for buying Midnight. I think that's going to be your tagline. So can we raise your hand, put your hands together, please, for our fantastic audience, and maybe you can catch them after some more questions. Thank you.